Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about the latest Guillermo del Toro film, The Shape of Water. I really enjoyed Guillermo del Toro over the years. Two films for me specifically that I really enjoyed from him were Pan's Labyrinth and Pacific Rim. Crimson Peak was all right. He's done a couple of other smaller films too that were, okay. Um, Obviously his films aren't for everybody, but for me personally, like I said, Pan's Labyrinth and Pacific Rim are the two films of his that I really, really enjoy. And I think he's one of these directors that not only has great visuals in his film, but he also has great stories. And usually, when it comes to directing, you either have directors that can tell really good stories, but they're not so great on their visuals, or of course, you're going to have directors that are excellent with visuals, but they're not so great with story. And Guillermo del Toro is really one of these directors where I can honestly say he's great at doing both things. He pays just as much attention to his story as he does to his visuals, and that's what's kind of so unique and special about him. And not only that, I feel like his visuals have a very unique folklore stories that have been around a while kind of feel to them. They almost kind of have like a Red Riding Hood or Goldilocks and the Three Bears almost kind of look and feel to them. They feel like stories that, even if they're in the future, even if they're in modern day, even if they involve, technology that doesn't exist and everything, he manages to find a way to make all his films feel like they're kind of stories that have been around for a while and films that you kind of hear about in myth and in legend. So that's what's kind of unique about him as a filmmaker. But anyway, back to the review of this movie. I'm reviewing the movie The Shape of Water for you today. It's his latest 2017 film, even though I am reviewing this in 2018 here. And this film focuses on a mute woman who has to speak through sign language. She can understand when people talk to her in like English and everything like that. But she herself, when she has to communicate with people, has to communicate with sign language. And people who don't understand sign language, she kind of has to give them little hints and symbols and things with her hands to kind of inform them what's going on when she's at work or at home or anything like that. Um, but the story really kicks off when we find out that this mute woman works at this research facility that focuses on studying like creatures that really aren't aren't really documented very well yet. That we're kind of discovering what exactly some of these creatures are. I think they said at one point in the movie that a lot of their creatures that they get are from South America and places where they might have like animals in the ocean or animals in the jungle or creatures of some kind like in the sewer somewhere that we kind of don't really understand yet. So they are taken to this research facility so they can better understand them, run some tests. They do things that are very much on the level of animal cruelty that they cover in this movie that isn't very well looked at by both the employees and the government. So there's obviously a thing with that in this movie. Um, but ultimately, what happens is this woman, and this is obviously a non spoiler review, I'm just telling you kind of the synopsis of the movie. This woman finds out about this creature that's kind of half fish, half human, half frog, so kind of three things at once. A lot of people online are saying it's like an amphibian creature, so more so like a frog more than anything else. Basically, it's the creature of the Black Lagoon. Once you look at him, you'll basically know, yeah, that's the creature of the Black Lagoon, pretty much. Um, so she kind of really kind of falls for this animal at first. She's able to communicate with this creature through sign language, teaches him how to eat stuff, teaches him about eggs and things that people would eat for like breakfast and lunch and dinner and so forth. Teaches him when people mean well on something, when people don't mean well on something, and so when she approaches him, obviously he's going to feel more comfortable than someone who's going to hurt him in this laboratory is going to do to him. But basically, as the film progresses, this creature and this woman start falling in love with each other, and unfortunately, the studies with this creature start to get more violent. So this woman starts looking into ways of getting this creature out of the laboratory without getting caught herself, and pursuing a relationship with this creature because they really are falling in love with each other. And so there's the whole thing with the laboratory looking into all the employees and who could possibly take the creature, and what are the risks that are now happening now that the creature's out of the laboratory and can do things out in society and so forth. So this woman has a lot of secrets and things she has to hide if she really wants to pursue a relationship with this animal. And so this movie takes full advantage of all these things that really are really awful things that she could encounter while trying to pursue a relationship with this creature. But overall, guys, I really enjoyed The Shape of Water a lot. I think it's a great movie. It might even be my favorite Guillermo del Toro film, possibly. I'm still kind of letting the film sink in for me. I reviewed this movie roughly a day after seeing it, so it's, what is it, January 3rd. I think I saw this on January 2nd, so um, gave myself roughly a day to kind of think it through. At the moment, I'm kind of leaning toward this might be my favorite Guillermo del Toro film. There's just so many things to love about this film. So many things that people who don't normally watch his films, I think, can catch on to and really could relate to in this movie. So there's just a lot of things to grasp onto in this film, and I think that's what I really like about it. So for my positives and negatives of The Shape of Water, Sally Hawkins, who plays the mute woman in this film, gives a terrific performance. If she wins Best Actress for this film for the Oscars, definitely well worth it, but definitely well deserved on her end. The fact that she has to play this woman who has to communicate through sign language and cannot talk, and yet we know so much about her and we get to learn about her and kind of learn about the things that she likes and doesn't like and how she feels alone all the time and how this creature can fix that. Just her performance in this film is just absolutely magnificent. So if Sally Hawkins once again wins the Oscar, I will be very happy just because she really nailed this role in this movie. I really liked her role in the reboot of Godzilla in 2014, and I also liked her role as the mother in Paddington. So there was two other films leading into this film that I really knew that she was very talented in. So she really gives a really great performance in this movie. And once again, going back to Guillermo del Toro, I loved that his ability of balancing both great visuals with a great storyline was very effective in this movie. It really kind of displays the talent he has as a director, that he can really tell you a great story while also giving you amazing visuals to the point where you kind of have to remind yourself that that's CGI that you're looking at in certain scenes, because he really knows how to handle great visuals in this movie. And like I said, he has a very unique folklore, been around for a while kind of look to his movies. So I really like that look and feeling that he has in this movie. Doug Jones, who also plays many other creatures in other Guillermo del Toro films, plays the actual creature in this movie, and he really nailed it this time around. The man's clearly a master of his craft when it comes to playing these practical, motion capture suit creatures. He really nailed it this time. I really got a lot of personality out of this character. And once again, just like Sally Hawkins, no dialogue at all. But yet I learned so much about this character and learned about the things he liked and didn't like and things that kind of startled him at first and things like that. Really love the creature that Doug Jones played in this movie. Octavia Spencer, who I love from the movie The Help, Michael Shannon, who I love from the film Man of Steel, and Richard Jenkins, who I love from the film The Indian in the Cupboard, all have roles in this movie, and all three of them are just absolutely terrific once again. I would even say this is probably the best acted Guillermo del Toro film. Every performance in this film just feels top notch, best of the best for everybody involved. Octavia Spencer, everything you loved about her in The Help is in this movie. She's funny, she's supporting, she's a really likable lady. I loved her screen presence in this film. It was just so funny to watch her in this movie. Michael Shannon, once again, he plays a great villain, just like he did in Man of Steel. Really, you kind of love to hate him, and there's a lot of things about him that you kind of understand where he's coming from. So just a really great performance on his end. And then Richard Jenkins, there's a struggle that he goes through within this film that I really can't talk about because it really is kind of a big spoiler in one scene of the movie. But the way he portrayed this character, the way how he was very supporting with Sally Hawkins' character as her neighbor at this apartment, really loved the support that he had as a character in this film, and I really got into that in this movie. I really kind of liked the subtitled dialogue in this film. I know that might kind of annoy people after a while. I know when I saw Pan's Labyrinth for the first time, the whole film was done in Spanish, and so for me, as someone who only speaks English, I had to read the subtitles the whole time. I really didn't mind doing that for when Sally Hawkins is trying to say something to somebody. It really was kind of unique to have all her dialogue through subtitles and through sign language and so forth. I thought it was a very unique way to express how the character's feeling about certain situations without just her physically saying the line and so forth. So I really like how Guillermo del Toro and Sally Hawkins handled that in this movie. I also really like the laboratory setting in this movie. I really like kind of this Cold War 1960s, late 1950s, roughly also. Laboratory setting in this film. It just felt very big, that there was a lot of things going on in it, that there is kind of life before the movie started in this laboratory. Really like the setting that Guillermo del Toro went with in this movie. Also, on a side note, for I think most of the scenes in this movie, specifically when Sally Hawkins is walking downtown and so forth, I think a lot of these scenes happened in my hometown of Madison, Wisconsin, which I really like because there's an Orpheum in this movie, and there's the Orpheum in Madison, Wisconsin. So there's a lot of really cool things, and I think there even is a character that talks about Madison, Wisconsin in this movie. So I don't think it's the entire film. I really do think, though, there's certain scenes that are meant to take place in Madison, Wisconsin, which I think is really cool. So Madison, Wisconsin, if you're listening in, like I am, live here. There's a lot of scenes that are supposed to be an older Madison, Wisconsin in the movie. So I thought that was kind of a really cool thing that Guillermo del Toro, out of all the places he could have taken for a setting in this movie, he chooses Madison, Wisconsin. So I thought that was really cool. For my negatives, though, of The Shape of Water, I thought Act 2 was very slow in this movie. The way the pacing was handled in Act 1 and the way the pacing is handled in the third act of the movie are perfectly fine. I feel like there's a lot of really slow scenes in that second act, though. Certain scenes really could have just used a good kick in the butt and could have moved along faster. So that is one negative I have with the movie. There's also two very hokey and rule breaking fantasy scenes in this movie that kind of break the rules with Sally Hawkins' character and kind of how the fantasy elements are handled in this movie for the other one that I'm referring to in this complaint. Um, just really two hokey scenes that really could have just belonged in the deleted scenes in this movie on the DVD or Blu-ray. Really could have gone without these two really hokey scenes. For those who see the movie, you'll probably know what I'm talking about when you see it. I really feel like they kind of break the rules of this movie and kind of give it imbalance as far as what the reality is of this world and the fantasy elements are of this world. So two scenes in this movie that really didn't work for me, but once they're done, and they're kind of out of the way for good. But two scenes I really feel like could have been better handled in this movie. And overall, I thought the overall story, even though I loved it, I loved all the homages to like Creature of the Black Lagoon and Beauty and the Beast and all these things that this film is clearly homaging in this movie. I thought the overall story was pretty predictable. Like there really wasn't a scene that kind of threw me off guard. Everything I kind of assumed was going to happen in this movie did happen in the movie. So I don't know. Maybe it's just because I've seen a lot of movies. I've seen a lot of movies that play out like this and have a similar theme and message and subject matter. I really kind of would have preferred, though, a story that maybe could have had me guessing a little bit more, because I feel like the story they went with was a little predictable at times. But overall, I'm going to give The Shape of Water a 9 out of 10. It really is a terrific movie with great performances, with a great directing and visuals and storyline effort from Guillermo del Toro. Doug Jones plays a great creature in this movie. I loved how, once again, it took place in Madison, Wisconsin for a lot of the scenes. The subtitled dialogue was interesting. The laboratory setting is interesting. But Act 2 is really slow in this movie. There's two scenes I really could have gone without in this movie that were really hokey. And I really would have preferred a story that didn't feel as predictable as it was. So 9 out of 10 for me. I highly recommend Shape of Water. If you love Guillermo del Toro, it's definitely worth checking out for sure.